makes peace an even more distant prospect. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
Live now to Dr. Andreas Krieg, an Associate Professor at the School of Security Studies at King's College London. Andreas, thanks very much for your time today. Violence escalating, first US serviceman killed since the truce in April, and seemingly no off-ramp. I mean, how do you assess where we are at the moment?
We're in a very, very dangerous cycle of escalation, one that I would consider to be an escalation trap, because particularly the Americans, but also the Iranians, are trying to find ways to escalate horizontally without doing it vertically. And what happened over the last 2 days is a clear escalation into the vertical space. If you look at the set of targets that the Americans have targeted across Iran, we've seen a much bigger, much more of a widening away from maritime military targets in the south of Iran to civilian infrastructure, including desalination plants, which was an absolute red line for the Iranians. They've made it very clear, to which they then responded yesterday, targeting the Gulf states. And this is the key problem. This is a spiral of escalation between the US and Iran, where the burden of that conflict is primarily borne by the Gulf states, because they're kind of the soft underbelly, if you will, of American defenses. And they don't have necessarily the resilience that the Iranians have, or the resilience that the US troops have in the region. And so the problem here is that a bit more escalation in any direction, horizontally or vertically, is not necessarily a problem for Iran and the US, but it's a major problem for the global economy, and it's a major problem for the Gulf states.
But how much of a problem is it actually for Iran to be alienating these Gulf states, many of which were allies, some of which, including Oman, for example, is important in any attempt at diplomatic resolution?
No, absolutely right. Qatar and Oman are absolutely crucial for the Iranians to climb down from this ladder of escalation. And so they cannot overplay their hand, and they've been really risking overplaying their hand in that respect. We've seen a toughening of resolve in countries like Bahrain, Kuwait, the UAE anyway, and potentially even Saudi Arabia. If now the response to this current line of American escalation is a targeting of civilian infrastructure more broadly across the GCC, the Gulf states, we will likely see a renewed effort to build a Gulf front to restore some sort of balance of deterrence, which is very difficult to do. We've seen already Kuwait, we've seen Bahrain, we've seen UAE and Saudi using their military force in the previous iteration of this conflict against Iran. It might start again.
Yeah.
The problem that the Iranians have really is, if they want this escalation to stop, they need Qatar, they need Oman, and so they know at some point they have to return to the negotiation table. But let me say one more thing. The negotiations are still ongoing, so we shouldn't, this isn't a complete collapse of the MOU, and this is also not a complete collapse of mediation.
Yeah, I mean, you talked there about the Iranian strategy. Briefly, Dr. Krieg, Donald Trump realizing once again it's easier to start a war than to end it. What is his strategy in all of this, and how can there be an American off-ramp?
I don't think Donald Trump has any strategy, because this is war for the sake of war. This is about posturing. It's about changing. What he ultimately wants is changing the terms of the MOU, particularly Article 5 about the Strait of Hormuz. This is not going to happen by military means. There is no military way out of it. The only way out is mediation and diplomacy. And the problem that the Iranians are facing is very similar as well. They're not changing the terms of the MOU. Ultimately, we need to return to some freedom of navigation. Again, here, the Omanis will play a very crucial role as they hold the southern corridor and the southern part of the Strait of Hormuz.
Dr. Andreas Krieg from King's College London, fascinating to